article being discussed today is called Lie Detection and Language Comprehension by Nancy Etcoff, Paul Ekman, John McGee, and Mark Frank. Some background information. Before this experiment, Nancy Etcoff did another experiment. It was called Marked Presentations of Emotional Facial Expressions Modulate Amygdala Activity Without Explicit Knowledge. In this experiment, she found that there is an unconscious response to facial expressions. She used the backward masking technique. There was 33 milliseconds of a fearful or happy face shown to the subjects, followed by 167 milliseconds of a neutral face. The subjects then reported what they saw. 80% of the subjects reported that they saw a neutral face. However, fMRI was also taken during this experiment. The fMRI showed an amygdala response to the happy and the fearful face. If it was the fearful face, the amygdala activity rose. If it was the happy face, the amygdala activity dropped. The significance of this experiment is that the amygdala responds to an emotional stimuli without the conscious awareness of the individual. The experiment also suggested a theory where the amygdala and the thalamus respond to the stimuli and interact with one another without the cortical processing of this information, which is why it would be unconscious even though it's happening. Back to the lie detection article, the article of focus. The question of the article was, are people who do not understand language better at detecting lies? The hypothesis was that people who cannot understand words are better at spotting liars. The group in the experiment that was the main focus was those with left hemispheric damage. These individuals had something called receptive aphasia. This is where one cannot comprehend written or spoken language. Usually, left hemispheric damage could be due to an accident, a stroke, or some other form of incident damaging the left hemisphere. Depending on the damage and where the damage is, depends on how severe the case is and how well they can comprehend or speak language. There are 4 groups in this experiment. The first group were those with left hemispheric damage. These were 10 patients from Mass General Hospital, and these patients also went a few tests before the experiment to see the range of their language comprehension. One of the tasks they had to do was match words with pictures, which they could do just fine. Almost 90% of the time they got that correct. However, once it came to sentence comprehension and recognizing which sentence matches with which picture, they could not do that. Therefore, these patients could understand words, just not sentences. The next few groups, one of the groups had right hemispheric damage. These were also 10 patients from Mass General Hospital. There were 10 patients that acted as a control group, and then there were 48 students from MIT acting as another control group. For the procedure, each subject was shown 2 short video clips. One of the clips, the person in the video was seeing a gruesome or horrifying video or action while they were pretending to be happy on camera. So they were masking their real emotions. The other video was of someone truly happy and showing their happy emotions. These videos were shown in sequence to each patient, but the order was random. The videos were also analyzed beforehand to decide what kind of cues there were in each video that would suggest that the person pretending to be happy is actually unhappy. These cues were put into 3 categories: facial cues, intonational cues, and videos that had both intonational and facial cues. The results. Subjects with aphasia are better at detecting lies than the rest of the subjects. They were even better at detecting lies in terms of facial expressions. If there were facial cues, they got the fact that they were lying 75% of the time versus the control group, who did not guess that. They were more at guessing the rate of chance. This graph shows the averages of the ability to detect lies. For the hemispheric group, a little over 60% of the time, they guessed correctly that the individual who was pretending to be happy really was not happy. For the rest of the groups, the right hemispheric control and MIT control, they were all a little bit over 40%. This graph shows the breakdown as to which cue was more suggestive and which cue really did not help in determining whether or not the individual was lying in the video. The green shows the vocal or intonational changes, the blue shows facial cues, and the purple shows both facial and vocal cues. As you can see, the vocal pitch cues really did not make a difference or did not help significantly at all with guessing whether or not the individual was lying. However, the facial expressions or the facial cues for the left hemispheric group really did help, almost at 75% difference. The other groups, however, are still around between 40 and 50% in terms of guessing correctly. Since all the other groups are at about 40% or 50% in terms of guessing whether or not the person is lying or masking their emotions, suggests that this is just by chance, guessing yes or no, and there isn't anything really driving that decision making. However, left hemispheric groups are at about 65%, and in terms of facial cues, it rises to 75%. This suggests that there really is something with those with left hemispheric damage that is helping them interpret these masked emotions. Why is this important? First of all, it suggests that people with aphasia have another way of understanding human emotions besides through language and communication. It also suggests that language itself can act as detrimental in terms of interpreting one's real emotions. How people with aphasia are able to detect these real hidden emotions is not clear. However, bringing back the theory from Etkoff's earlier work, the idea that the amygdala and thalamus interpret and recognize this data from these facial cues or facial stimuli unconsciously to the brain's awareness is a theory that could explain some of this. Those with aphasia have left hemispheric damage and they cannot understand language completely. So their brain has to find another way to try and interpret human language and human emotions. This could be where the amygdala thalamus comes into play and these unconscious awareness of the emotions suddenly become conscious. And there could be some kind of connection where the amygdala reaction could actually help in telling the people with aphasia what exactly another person is really meaning when they're talking, since they don't understand the language. A type of plasticity. So what's also important to acknowledge was that there was one subject who had not had aphasia for more than 1 year, and he or she actually had the same results as the control group in terms of interpreting the real emotions. Those having aphasia over a year had that extra bump in their interpreting the facial expressions and facial emotions. Some issues arise with this article as well. These individuals with aphasia clearly had mild aphasia because they could understand words and connect words with pictures. Lots of people with aphasia do not understand any form of language, cannot read, cannot write. It just doesn't happen. So whether or not all people with aphasia can detect lies is a stretch. Only this mild form of receptive aphasia is what was really studied. Also, was it really lie detection or detecting masked emotions? Someone saying their sister got an A on her exam when she really got a C, that's not really hiding emotions, but that is lying. Could they detect that? Probably not. So also saying they are lie detectors is a bit of a stretch as well. Clearly there needs to be more research into this area. Why aphasias can understand these facial expressions better is still unknown. However, taking both experiments Ed Koff performed and combining them into one could give more insight. If the subjects were shown both of the videos while having an fMRI, the areas of the brain that are active for, say, the people with aphasia versus those of the controls could give light into how exactly people with aphasia are able to pick up on these small facial cues that help them detect lies. However, this did give some interesting insight and raise tons of questions on the ability of aphasia and the plasticity of the brain.